Hey everyone, it's Seth from Classic Gaming Brothers. This episode is sponsored by Audible. Enjoy the episode.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Classic Gaming Brothers. I'm Zach.
And I'm Seth.
We're the Classic Gaming Brothers.
We are the Classic Gaming Brothers. That's right.
The Classic Gaming Brothers. The brothers who are classic. The classiest. Oh, I thought you said the classist.
The classist. This is like back into the Roman times, as it were.
Yeah.
You all plebeians.
Oh, plebeians.
Or that game, there's a game, the Age of Decadence. It is...
Age of Decadence.
It's a tough game. Mostly you spend your time dying in it.
That's fun.
But when someone says classes, that's the first thing that comes to my mind, because there's a lot of like class warfare.
Oh, yes. I've seen pictures of this game before.
It's that's a tough game.
It looks like a tough game.
Not a game that I've recently been playing, but what have you recently been playing?
Well, Seth, recently I have been playing Killing Floor by Tripwire Interactive. Killing Floor is a game that was made by Tripwire back in 2009. It's a cooperative first-person shooter. It was originally released as a mod for Unreal Tournament 2004, and the retail version was released in May of 2009 for Windows and Mac. The game is a wave-based shooter where you must eliminate all these zombie-like creatures called Zeds, Z-E-D-S. You also have different classes that you can play as, such as Commando, who primarily use like SMGs and machine guns, Support, who use shotguns. They can also like weld doors shut, and there's medics and all sorts. Though I think one of my favorite classes, just in terms of name, is the Firebug, who, as you can tell from his name, burns things.
Is that like the Pyro from Team Fortress?
Yeah, it's like the Pyro from Team Fortress. So these classes are tied to perks, such as the weapon that your character might start off with, or in terms of how much that weapon costs for you. So for example, if you're playing as a support class and you've leveled up a little bit, shotguns will be less expensive, and you'll likely start with like a shotgun, which can be very beneficial. After eliminating the waves of monsters, you kill a boss known as the Patriarch, which I said kind of looks like a monster version of John Lennon with a chain gun arm.
Oh,
he's got like
fun.
long hair and round glasses. It's overall a very fun game. It has some very goofy mods. There's a lot of community run servers that are still up, so I highly recommend grabbing a copy. It's usually not super expensive. I will say that the sequel that came out in 2016 is very good, if not better than the first game. The first game is smaller, and I was able to install it faster, which is why I was playing it recently.
Oh, I got you.
But it's a good game. One of my favorite mods was there's a lot of level mods mostly, and there's like a Legend of Zelda one where the level looks like the village from Link to the Past. But probably one of the best ones is someone made a map out of the title sequence of the game. So when like you start the game, it gives you the logo, like it says like Tripwire, and it says like Unreal Tournament, then it says Killing Floor. Well, someone just put that in a skybox and turn that into a map. It's stupid.
That's fun.
Yeah,
that's fun. We've never played Killing Floor together.
No, we haven't. It's a good game. Maybe someday we will play it.
Maybe someday we'll play it. Like that day will be the day that we play all the games.
It's true.
Maybe we'll play it during the Extra Life live stream.
Yeah.
That can be fun.
What about you? What have you been playing, Seth?
So recently I've actually been playing a game called Baldur's Gate.
Oh.
It is I've owned this game on the PC, but I've been playing it on the Switch version.
Oh, cool.
It was a game that was originally developed by a defunct studio called Black Isle, and it was published by BioWare, and then was remastered by a company called Beamdog. None of those companies are working on Baldur's Gate 3, which is being developed by Larian Studios, which did the Divinity and Divinity 2 games. Baldur's Gate is a tactical computer role-playing game, or a CRPG, that sparked, according to the trailer for Neverwinter Nights, a role-playing renaissance. Where Neverwinter Nights sparked a Multiplayer Revolution. The game was originally released in 1998. I originally played it back then, but I only played it after playing through Baldur's Gate 2, because I bought Baldur's Gate 2 from the store first, and then I went back and bought Baldur's Gate 1. I was also a child, so my decision to buy things was metered by my parents. The Enhanced Edition was released in 2012. It was eventually ported over to iOS and Android, which I think I own a copy on my phone. And then on October 15th in 2019, they brought the Enhanced Edition to the PlayStation 4, the Xbone, and the Switch. So far, I've been playing a Elven Mage. Oh, he's a fighter mage, and I'm going through the original game. His name is Gentry. And in case anyone's I don't name them all more bad.
More bad the second.
More bad the second. More bad the horrible. So his name is Gentry, and I'm going through the original game. I plan on beating the original game on the Switch and continue Gentry's journey through Baldur's Gate 2. I actually haven't beaten Baldur's Gate 1 to completion. I have beaten Baldur's Gate 2 multiple times. I've also beaten the expansion pack to Baldur's Gate 2 multiple times. I'm also excited there is the Dragonspire.
Siege of Dragonspear.
Yeah, there's a new expansion called the Siege of Dragonsphere. Spear, which was made by Beamdog, and I haven't actually played through that. So I'm kind of excited to take Gentry from the first game into the Dragonspear game into the second game and beat that game with Gentry. The game uses a second edition of Dungeons & Dragons rule set. It's set in the Forgotten Realms, which is a setting of Dungeons & Dragons. The other things that are set in Forgotten Realms are like the Dritz Duwarden books written by R.A. Salvatore, and the books about like Elminster and all of those.
I love Dritz.
Baldur's Gate. Dritz is great. Though in the second game, Baldur's Gate 2, it does hybrid the game into 3rd edition and added additional classes into the game that you could play, which then, when they were remastered, brought those to the original game. So you can play as like a sorcerer in the first and second game instead of just the second game. Or a barbarian, which were brought in because of their like hybridization of 3rd edition to 2nd edition, because it came at that sweet spot when 3rd edition was coming out.
Right.
And then actually for Neverwinter Nights and Icewind Dale 2, they switched over to 3rd edition rule sets, which for anyone who's not familiar, who's listening, who may not be familiar with Dungeons & Dragons editions, the biggest addition the biggest change between 2nd edition and 3rd edition was the calculation to hit somebody. So in 1st edition, you add and you try to hit an armor class that is a higher number. So you roll like a d20, you add a number, you try to get over that d20 number. Where in the 2nd edition, you had a THAC0 number, which was to hit armor class of 0, and you were attempting to get over your THAC0 number to hit an armor class of 0, and then higher up over it to hit lower armor classes.
Okay.
It was convoluted.
Yeah.
Well, anyone who's a diehard 2nd edition fan will tell me it's not convoluted. But as somebody who played a majority of all of 3rd edition, I like how 3rd edition does it. The game, you play as for the story, you play as a what's known as a child of Baal, who was the god of murder, who got murdered, and you essentially have a huge destiny ahead of you. In the beginning, in the first game, you're just trying to figure out what's going on with the local economy. Like there's like some iron shortage and stuff like that, and the iron is all bad, so your weapons break a lot. They don't break a lot in the second game because you fix the iron shortage an issue. And then by the last, like the expansion pack, you're like having these epic fights with like demon princes and gods and stuff like that. It's a pretty fun game, and not really the same. It has anything to do with the game that we're going to be talking about. Are you bored Tuesday through Saturday waiting for another episode of Classic Gaming Brothers?
If you are, well, then do we have a solution for you.
You can try a 30-day free trial of Audible, and in doing so, we'll make some money, and you'll be able to enjoy a nice book like Ready Player One by Ernest Cline.
Or Masters of Doom by David Kushner. Both books are narrated by Will Wheaton to hold you over till we get back to you on Sunday.
Visit audibletrial.com/classicgamingbrothers to check it out.
That's audibletrial.com/classicgamingbrothers.
And now back to our show.
So, Seth and I are going to be talking actually about a series of games for the next 2 episodes. In this first episode, we're going to talk about kind of the earlier iterations of these games. And for those of you who did not read the title and did not catch the reference that was probably included before the opening title sequence, we are talking about the System Shock games. So there are 2 System Shock games, System Shock 1 and System Shock 2. The first was created in 1994. It is by Looking Glass Technologies and published by Origin Systems, which was a subsidiary of EA Games. In fact, when you start System Shock, it says Origin Systems, a subsidiary of EA Games.
Is it EA Games or is it Electronic Arts?
I think it is Electronic Arts. Yeah.
Still like Electronic Arts Studios or
Electronic Arts Studios. Beautiful. It was developed by 2 guys, Doug Church and Warren Spector. And the game is a cyberpunk vision of 2072, not too far from now. You control a character who is an unnamed hacker. You're attempting to bring down the malevolent artificial intelligence known as Shodan, spelled Shodan.
Shodan. Do you know what the abbreviation's for?
Shodan stands for Sentient Hyper-Optimized Data Access Network.
Sentient, hyperactive...
Sentient Hyper-Optimized Data Access Network.
Oh, fun. It sounds like a thing I'd use for work.
It does. She sounds very... like her actual name sounds boring. But if you look up a photo of them, their face is this female face that's surrounded by like wires coming from it. It's very networky. So that's essentially the breakdown of System Shock. But Seth, do you want to tell us some interesting things about this game? And again, this came out in 1994, so this is around the time of Doom and before the time of Duke Nukem.
So the game was a first-person shooter type game, though it played more like an adventure game. You had inventory management, puzzles, there was emails that you could read, there was upgradable hardware, and a variety of weapons and different ways to fight all the enemies. It was the first game to have audio diaries, and that is a trend that, if you're familiar with any of the Shock games, continues into later games. So, and the audio diaries were all voiced, as was the dialogue from like Shodan speaking to you and different system dialogues. It was all voiced acted. Wasn't necessarily professional voice actors, since voice acting was as a profession in its infancy, so they didn't have like professional actors doing the audio, but it was still present, which is pretty new for games of its time. The game was not a massive success when it came to sales. It was praised for being innovative and was definitely a trendsetter for what was to come from this type of style of game.
System Shock is arguably the first game in what became known as the 0451 games. And these are games that were developed by people from either Looking Glass Games, such as Thief and System Shock, or future Ion Storm games, which developed the Deus Ex franchise.
Oh, and the Bioshock games eventually as well.
And Bioshock, yeah, exactly. And the numbers 0451 refer to a reoccurring password that appears in all of these games. It is in fact the first code that you use in System Shock, and it's buried in a log. You have to dig through a log in order to find the reference to the code. And it has been also used to describe the style of games, being very story-heavy while also having the illusion or the reality of choice. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later when we talk about Bioshock.
It should also be noted that while regarded as a cult classic, System Shock's control scheme has aged considerably and was difficult for those playing it when it came out. There's a lot of moving parts when it comes to keyboard shortcuts, to the point where most US keyboards have 104 keys. And I would say that 80% of the keyboard is dedicated to an action that you can perform in System Shock. So you're keeping track of close to probably 80 to 90 keys of what you could do in regards to actions. So there's a lot of things that you can, ways to interact with the stuff on the screen. For example, if you were to pick up an item, you would then have to move the item into submenus for them to be properly assessed and then equipped. And they did do an enhanced version, which is not the remake, because there's also a remake that's in the pipeline. But GOG, Good Old Games, did an enhanced version where they make it so it's streamlined a little bit to the point where someone who really wants to play this game could sit down and get the controls and it won't be super difficult or annoying.
Yeah, it's also built on a more modern source port so that it runs flawlessly on modern computers. It can be played at highest resolution, which is good. I mean, it doesn't necessarily make the game look better, but it certainly makes it play better on a modern computer. Because if you ever try playing a very low resolution game on a very high resolution monitor, it sometimes doesn't play the way you anticipate it to. So that's System Shock, and following System Shock was a little game known as System Shock 2. System Shock 2 was created by former Looking Glass Technology employees who went on to form a company called Irrational Games in 1997 in Westwood, Massachusetts. They were local. They're local northeastern people that were in my neck of the woods. The founding members were Jonathan Clay, Robert Fermier, and Ken Levine. Ken Levine, who later became kind of best known for his work on the Bioshock games. In 1999, they released System Shock 2 with the assistance of the rebranded Looking Glass Studios. So Looking Glass Technologies rebranded themselves, and then they also kind of stopped working on games directly and kind of more worked on publishing and assisting companies with projects, not doing, first-hand things. System Shock 2 is a fairly deep departure from the first game, and you can tell that almost immediately from starting the game when you play it. It retains a lot of the elements such as inventory management, upgradable hardware, NPC messages, and audio logs and such, but also aimed to focus more on horror. Another thing that System Shock 2 did was add something called psionic abilities. So your character can now utilize and unlock in the game these things called psionic powers, and it provides new ways to fight the enemies and solve puzzles. So there are certain psionic abilities that might shoot an energy beam or something at a enemy, or light someone on fire, sort of thing.
Very similar to your plasmids or your vigors.
Exactly.
You're just looking at Bioshock. Or Bioshock Infinite.
Yeah, exactly. And the gameplay of System Shock 2 is also far more streamlined from what was available in the first System Shock, as you now have proper mouse controls. So in System Shock 1, in order to properly move around, you actually had to use 2 keys to look up and down. It wasn't bound to a mouse. The mouse was actually used so that you could, if you did have a mouse, it was used so that you can interact with objects on the screen, such as clicking items and stuff that you saw. So they fixed this in System Shock 2. They gave it proper mouse controls. And the addition of the mouse and keyboard combination also opened up the gameplay substantially, and also provides a overall more user-friendly experience. I would say playing System Shock 2 is probably a better time than playing System Shock 1. It's certainly easier to get into than playing System Shock 1, because System Shock 2 follows a lot of the kind of what you would expect from a first-person shooter of that era. And the
System Shock 2 is the sequel, so it takes place after the events of the first game, and about 42 years after the events, where you play as a role of a soldier who's aboard a ship called the Von Braun. And the ship, the Von Braun, has undergone a catastrophic event that after they received a distress call from a planet. The crew are now zombie-like monsters, and you must follow instructions of a survivor to be able to get to safety. Things aren't always as they seem, as it is a shock game. The theme of the game is horror-oriented, as we mentioned, and as you explore the Von Braun, you are confronted with numerous infected former members of the crew, as well as genetic experiments that have escaped their labs, such as like monkeys with blasters. The game uses lighting to make the ship feel dark and provides a very creepy atmosphere. Audio logs that are scattered throughout provide you with some context about what life was like aboard the Von Braun and how the crew responded during the crisis. Very similarly to life on Rapture as you go through Rapture and Bioshock.
Yeah, and the reason obviously we keep referencing Bioshock is because, and we're going to talk about this in our part 2, but Bioshock is the spiritual successor to System Shock, and it carries a lot of familiarity. So if you play Bioshock, or if you have played Bioshock, I certainly think it's within your interest to go back and play System Shock 2, or at least maybe watch a let's play of it or something. There's a lot of familiarity with System Shock 2 that I know. The reason I played System Shock 2 was because I played Bioshock, and I found out about it. I found out about System Shock, and I was like, I gotta try that out. And it very much feels like you're playing Bioshock, just older and in space. You know, the whole idea of, you know, using your psionic ability and then to stun someone and then smacking them over the head to knock them out is straight out of, you know, originally from System Shock, and that becomes kind of a staple. The old 1-2 in Bioshock. So yeah, that's just kind of our brief kind of overview of the System Shock games. There were 2 of them. So there is talk now about System Shock 3. It is being developed by a company called Other Side Entertainment, and it's still in development. I think so far we only have photos of it. There hasn't been any gameplay or anything else, but it was revealed alongside a remake of the first System Shock that Night Dive is doing. But yeah, Seth, so not to go into reverse order, but did you have any memories of System Shock growing up? I mean, it wasn't really a game that you've played, right?
No, I had friends who were fans of the System Shock series. I tried to play it back in college, but even then, it's a very, especially because I like playing games in order, so I tried to play System Shock 1, and it is a very difficult game to play. I think I did play some of System Shock 2. The sad thing I think about System Shock 2, though, it's not really a memory, but so System Shock 2 was, they definitely thought more, you know, they put horror elements into it. It got dozens of rewards, including 7 Game of the Year prizes, and it was regarded as a very highly influential game, specifically on first-person shooters and horror games. Like, I don't think we would have, like, Soma or Amnesia Descent or any of those type games without System Shock 2. However, it was declared well ahead of its time, though it did not perform well commercially. So even though System Shock 2 was declared this innovative, positive title for gaming, by 2000, after being released in August of 1991, by the April 2000, it only sold 58,000 copies, which is not good.
There was enough demand for it that there was an enhanced edition released alongside the System Shock 1 enhanced edition that came out on the 20th anniversary by Night Dive. And I'll mention Night Dive in my Buy Wait Pass because my Buy Wait Pass is very relevant to this. But that I think that kind of helped bring some more recognition to the System Shock games, as well as the whole popularity of Bioshock, because I think as Bioshock became popular, people wanted to look into the history of, you know, Ken Levine and Irrational Games, and they saw System Shock 2, and that leads them to System Shock 1. So I think it definitely helped that Bioshock was released because it gave kind of new life to these games in many ways.
Yeah, I think that, like, even so, like in 1999, it actually won a runner-up in the PC Gamer's Game of the Year category, and was nominated for a role-playing Game of the Year category as well, which role-playing Game of the Year went to Planescape Torment, which, to be honest, is the right answer.
It is the better game, maybe.
Well, it's not the role-playing game. It's hard to compete with that. Though it's very Deus Ex, as it were, in regards to the amount of choice, like feel of choices that you have.
Yeah.
What's fun is Irrational Games are known for Bioshock and Bioshock Infinite. They also worked on some other interesting games that I just want to make a reference to, and that is SWAT 4
Yeah.
and Freedom Force. And Freedom Force versus the Third Reich as the developers.
And SWAT 4, to throw it back, is a game in the Police Quest franchise.
Yeah, published by Sierra Entertainment, where Freedom Force and Freedom Force versus the Third Reich were published by Crave Entertainment and Vivendi Universal Games, and are great games in their own right, deserving their own episodes. But you essentially play as superheroes before superheroes got extremely popular.
They're two very good games.
There was supposed to be a third Freedom Force 3, but it was canceled.
Another interesting thing just to note is that Prey, the 2017 Prey, not to be confused with the 2006 game Prey, but the 2017 game Prey by Arcane Studios is also considered a spiritual sequel to System Shock, though not in the same way that Bioshock is, where like Ken Levine worked on System Shock 2 and was like, Bioshock is the spiritual successor. This was made by just people who were like, it's the spiritual successor. I think Arcane has some history and ties to Origin systems and such in terms of their history, but the game Prey does feel very System Shock-esque. You're on a spaceship. There's a threat that you have to fight. People have been mutated or changed, and you also develop like psychic abilities that you can use. It's a very good game. I highly recommend it. That will do it, at least for System Shock, but like I said, this is a two-parter, so get ready for Bioshock because it's coming up.
Yeah, episode 47 is when we'll do that. Because we don't like to do things in order around here.
We never do things in order. But yeah, so it'd be on the lookout for our Bioshock episode, where we'll take a kind of more deeper dive. Get it? Deep dive, like under this.
Oh, that was bad.
Anyway, let's get into our Buy Wait Pass segment, if we would. So I think I'll go first because mine seems thematic. So Seth, my Buy Wait Pass, well, it's the System Shock remake.
By Night Dive Studios.
Yeah, by Night Dive Studios. And it's supposed to be due out in 2020. I don't know how true that is, but that's just what they say. So, like, if you go to the website, it says to be released 2020. So, or TBD 2020, I'm pretty sure.
Well, they got a
few months
left.
They got a few months. They might surprise us. Maybe December 31st. At 11:59 p.m. they will drop it. So System Shock Remake, as the name implies, is a reboot reimagining of the first System Shock game. And Night Dive, who I'm pretty sure I've mentioned a few times, have previously worked on remasters of other games. And they did the enhanced edition of System Shock 1 and the re-release of System Shock 2. And they say they are focused on bringing back the classic experience of System Shock into the modern adventure horror FPS genre. And as a note, I did play the alpha demo. It was available for a brief time, I believe.
Yeah, you hit things with wrenches.
Yes. It's good. I liked it a lot. I really enjoyed what I was playing. There are obviously some kinks that I think needed to be worked out. Not in terms of like graphical or anything like that. It's just I think they're still trying to refine the gameplay. It didn't feel quite what I think they're going for at the moment, but it was very good. And I certainly look forward to playing the full retail version whenever it is available. And as mentioned, they suggest it will be out sometime this year, and they got a few months. So I do personally have it down as a wait. Like Seth, I do like trying to play games in order, and when it comes to remakes, I do like trying to play the original game first, at least play through parts of it. So I do want to try to replay the first game. I played a little bit of it many years ago when I first bought it. Do not remember anything. So I'm going to try to replay it potentially soon, and then I can actually experience the remake as what, Night Dive wants people to experience as, which is this sense of classic nostalgia and combination with modern FPS adventure horror games. It does seem very cool though. I do like the aesthetic of like creepy space stations.
So for my Byway Pass, I'm going to talk about the game Snowtopia. Snowtopia. It was developed by T42 and published by, or will be published by Goblins Studio. It's coming out in 2020. It's in alpha access right now. So if you want to play an alpha snow game, then here I'll tell you some more. It's a ski resort tycoon game where you build and design your slopes and you try to cater your slopes to the skiers that come to your resort. So you may have a clumsy skier or like a risk taker skier, so they'll want more difficult slopes or more casual slopes. There is no money in the game that has been inputted so far, but it works on a volunteer system. So in order to get people to the top of slopes, you need lifts. In order to work the lifts, you need volunteers. Some lifts require more volunteers than others. So if you don't staff them with enough volunteers, it will slow down, and then you will have people waiting to ride on your lift. In order to get your peak efficiency and make people happy, you need to have your lifts run. Also, volunteers kind of ebb and flow because they're based on happiness, and they're also based on how many skiers are actually in your resort. So you get a number of volunteers based on the number of people in your in your resort, and you also get a number of volunteers. You get more with people who are really happy. So if you make a really good slope that people really, so if like the clumsy skiers really like you, then you'll have a clumsy skier guy operating the lifts. Beyond that, you have to also do maintenance on your lifts, and maintenance on your lifts and maintenance on your slopes, and you get a pretty decent sized map. The graphics are very similar there, so it's like it's very tycoon type style graphics where it's like you can zoom in on your buildings and zoom out of the buildings, and the buildings are kind of like little model buildings type deal, and the people are like little model people, kind of like closer up than like a Sim Tycoon game or something like that. But it's a fun, easygoing game. I'm gonna put it down as a wait right now. I'm probably gonna play a little more of the alpha access and see how that shakes out and whether or not I want to be able to pick it up.
We should do an episode on tycoon games, like Roller Coaster Tycoon and Roller Coaster Tycoon 2 and Railroad Tycoon and Railroad Tycoon 2 and Zoo Tycoon and Zoo Tycoon 2.
A Hospital Tycoon?
Yes, and Mall Tycoon, Lemonade Stand Tycoon. And
oh man, if we just have Ice-T just saying that.
Yes. You know what? I know what we're going to get for a cameo. It's just Ice-T listing all the Tycoon games.
Good. Yeah, so that's going to be our show for you today.
Yeah, System Shock.
It's got System Shock and System Shock 2.
The sequel.
And the beginnings of talking about Irrational Games and Bioshock. And there are a number of ways that you can contact us, support us, or listen to us.
Tell me all about them.
I'm going to. So you can contact us by sending us an email at classicgamingbrothers@classicgamingbrothers.com, or you can send it to Seth@classicgamingbrothers.com or Zach@classicgamingbrothers.com, or you can send it to classicgamingbrothers@gmail.com. However you want to, you can send those emails right away. When you send us an email, you will get entered into a giveaway where we will give away a game to you. Sometimes it's by choice, sometimes it's randomly, but we do have a list of games that we are planning on giving away. So if you want a free game, send us some feedback. We like hearing feedback and we like hearing from you guys. It helps us with future episodes. It helps us with making sure that our quality is coming through at the highest quality as possible.
It's true.
And you can also contact us if you don't want to fill out an email. You can go to our website at www.classicgamingbrothers.com and go to the contact page and fill out a form. So if you don't want to fill out an email, you can always fill out a form. So then, in order to support us, we just want you to listen to us. Listen to us. Tell 3 of your friends. No more, no less. Just 3 friends. As if somebody likes something, then they tell 3 people. If they don't like it, they tell much more. So tell 3 people.
That's right.
And let them know how you like listening to a podcast where 2 brothers talk about video games. You could also, if you so desire and want to wear merch, you can go to our incredibly outdated web store and purchase a shirt or a mug. They're the same shirt and mug if you've gone to our web store before that are there still. So if those didn't entice you then, they're not going to entice you now.
Unless they do entice you now.
That's true.
Yeah, people's moods change.
They do. They do. So it may get updated eventually with newer stuff, but Probably not by this time this episode airs. Maybe by the time if you're listening to this episode in the future, because you're a future fan from post-COVID-19 pandemic, and it's so far in the future you don't even know what the COVID-19 is. Then they'll probably still be the same shirt, probably the same mug. But finally, you can listen to us wherever podcasts are heard. You could even now listen to us on Amazon. On Amazon Music, there we are. If you search for us, Classic Gaming Brothers, we're also available on Stitcher, Google Play Music, whatever, Google Podcasts, iTunes, Acast, iHeartRadio, and all of these. I could just list agents for so long, but we are there. You can find us, listen to us. You can even ask your smart device to play us, and it should figure us out. You can also check out our Twitch, Classic Gaming Brothers, or Zach's View versus Classic Gaming Brothers, or VS Classic Gaming Brothers. And you can watch us play games. We do so very occasionally. The last time, though, we did play, we found Crunchy, and it was terrifying.
It was.
And so that's it. Is there anything else that you can think of, Zach?
Don't play games like my brother.
And don't play games like my brother.
I've been Zach.
And I've been Seth.
And we've been the Classic Gaming Brothers.
We have. That's
right.
Look at you, hacker. A pathetic creature of meat and bone, panting and sweating as you run through my corridors. How can you challenge a perfect, immortal machine?